Okay, good morning everyone, and Chazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Monday morning as we are studying this week Parashat Vayakhel. Vayakhel begins with a very interesting phrase. Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat Bnei Yisrael vayomer alehem. Moshe gathers the Jewish people and he says to them, Ele hadevarim asher tziva Adonai la'asot otam. These are the words that God created, that God commanded. Tziva. And then he goes on, what did God command? Sheshet yamim te'aseh melacha, for 6 days work should be done. Ubayom hashevi'i yelechem kodesh. On the 7th day, no work shall be done. It shall be a holy day. Lo ta'aru esh bechol moshebotechem. You cannot do any work, you cannot light on a fire, etc., etc. So Moshe begins this week's parasha, gathering the Jewish people. And by the way, Moshe Rabbeinu makes sure to deliver these laws not individually to one person at a time or to even a group of people at a time, but to all the people at a time. Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat Bnei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu over here commanding the Jewish people on the Shabbat. He's commanding them all together. From here, by the way, we learn the beautiful mitzvah of derashot, making speeches on Shabbat, gatherings and gatherings. Kehilot, kehilot. This is learned from this week's parasha, where Vayakhel, Moshe gathered the Jewish people to teach them about Shabbat. Why did he gather all of them? Usually we know Moshe Rabbeinu, the way he taught the Torah was in stages. First he taught Aharon, then he taught his kids, then he taught the elders, and then he taught all the Jews. But here Moshe did it in one shot. He did it in one shot to teach us this beautiful lesson, that the classes on Shabbat, the community should come together. Coming to synagogue, coming to learn, coming to pray. Baruch Hashem, our synagogue over here, unbelievable what's going on. Explosion. Every Shabbat, there's maybe throughout the day over 1,000 people coming into the synagogue. In the night, Friday night, Shabbat morning, Shabbat afternoon, classes and classes and classes, learning and learning and learning, praying and praying and praying. Ashenu matov chelkenu. How lucky we are, how blessed we are. And this is just our synagogue. I'm sure this is happening synagogues all over the world. This is the mitzvah of kehilot, of coming together on Shabbat. Vayakhel Moshe, so Moshe gathers the Jewish people and he commands us about the mitzvah of Shabbat. And then the very next pasuk, Vayomer Moshe, Moshe then says to the people, Zeh hadavar asher tziva Adonai lemor. And God also commanded that you should bring terumah, bring a donation, bring your money, bring your jewelry, bring your silver, bring your earrings, bring whatever gold you have. We need materials, because guess what, people? We are building a Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu this week instructs the people about collecting for the Mishkan. We know about the Mishkan because we read about it 2 weeks ago, but the Jewish people have yet to hear about it. Let's not forget, Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai this entire time. God's telling him about the Mishkan. God's telling him about the clothing of the Kohen Gadol. The Jewish people don't know yet. They're waiting. They're excited. They did the Chet HaEgel. They messed up a little bit. Then Moshe comes down, he breaks the tablets, he goes back up for another set of tablets, and finally he comes down. So we had no idea about the Mishkan, about anything. So Vayakhel Moshe, Moshe gathers the Jewish people, and he commands them to Shabbat, and he commands them about the Mishkan. We have this new project, everyone, a project of building the Mishkan, a house for God. But what the Be'er Yosef points out is that both of these commandments, Shabbat and Mishkan. And by the way, that's how we know these two are very connected, Shabbat and Mishkan. We know whatever's forbidden on Shabbat, it's learned actually from what was done in order to build the Mishkan. That's how we know today. It says don't work on Shabbat. But what's work? What's work? Is carrying table from the kitchen to the living room, is that work? It's work, it's heavy. But that's actually not forbidden on Shabbat. Going like this to a light switch, that's work. That's forbidden. Which one's harder? You tell me. Carrying a table, carrying boxes of water, much harder. But that's allowed. Because work does not mean sweat, does not mean hard, does not mean muscle. That's not what work means. How do you know what work means? We know it from this week's parasha, from the opening pasuk, that the Torah juxtaposes Shabbat and the Mishkan. Well, whatever was done, build the Mishkan, cannot do on Shabbat. So as an example, in the Mishkan, they created fire. They lit a fire in order to make the spices, in order to be able to color all the materials for the roof of the Mishkan. So therefore, you cannot put on a fire. They cooked, so therefore we cannot cook. They carried, we cannot carry. They planted, we cannot plant. They harvested, we cannot harvest. There's 39 milachot. And by the way, we got to start learning about them. Because there's no way, even if you're a good Jew, even if you're a good person, you mean well, but there's no way you're going to be able to know all the halachot unless you open a book. It's not just intuition. There's halachot. So we got to start studying on our own time. If you're not learning Torah on your own, by the way, today, you're never going to finish. You're never going to get anywhere. Going to a class once a day, twice a day, there's only so much inspiration. At the end of the day, you got to learn. We got to know. We got to know. There's so many books. There's tens of thousands of books. And thank God today they're in English, they're whatever language you speak. So we got to go. We got to educate ourselves. We got to start doing learning on our own today. There's no excuse. Maybe once upon a time you say we needed a rabbi. I don't speak Hebrew. Today you don't need to speak anything. Today you have all the things. You have technology. We have so much wealth at our disposal to study, to open, to learn. So we got to start learning. We got to start opening the books. Well, anyways, Moshe Rabbeinu commands the Jewish people two things: Shabbat and the Mishkan. Both of them, he begins with the phrase, Ele adevarim asher tziva Adonai. God commanded. By Shabbat, Pasuk Bet of this week's Parashat, Pasuk Aleph. We're in chapter 35, by the way. Pasuk Aleph by Shabbat. And then just a few psukim later, Pasuk 4 by the Mishkan. Ze hadavar asher tziva Adonai lemor. Again, that God commanded. And he goes on to tell them about the Mishkan. And so why are these two things written in such an interesting way? That it's as if it's like specifying that it was Hashem commanded. We don't usually find that, we don't find that expression, God commanded. We usually say, God said to put on tzitzit. It doesn't say God commanded to put tzitzit. Right? Tziva, the language of commanding. Explains Be'er Yosef something very powerful. We know the Mishkan that the Jewish people go on to build. The Midrash explains that it was actually a kapara. It was an atonement for which sin? Mishkan was an atonement for the Heta Egel. So as an example, the Egel they brought with gold of their earrings. Over here we find that the Mishkan was built with vanezim. They brought their earrings. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yavo Zahav. God says, let the gold that you brought once upon a time for nonsense, for sin, bring that gold for holiness. Which, by the way, I just want to tell you, it's an amazing lesson. We could just stop over here because that's already an amazing lesson. The Jewish people brought gold for sin, and God says, shame on you. Egel, you got to do teshuvah. What's teshuvah look like? Teshuvah, you may think, means now no more owning gold. Now get rid of the gold. Now throw out all your gold. But the truth is, God says, no, that's not teshuvah. Teshuvah is not to get rid of your tools, to get rid of your resources. It's not to throw out who you are. You find a lot of times people, when they were young, maybe they did things that were inappropriate. Baruch Hashem, they grow out older, they get mature, they go to Israel, whatever it is, and they become more religious, more refined, more observant, more connected. And you see a lot of times people make a big mistake. They think that religious means also becoming a different person, throwing away your old self, changing. All of a sudden, this person was very loud. You see them now, Baal Teshuvah, they're very quiet. They were very funny and very serious. They were very outgoing, became an introvert. They knew how to do a lot. The truth is, that's a big mistake. That's not what Teshuvah should look like. Teshuvah doesn't mean to take away who you are. Teshuvah means to redirect who you are. Lashuv means to return. It doesn't say to throw it away. It says just redirect it. If you once upon a time you used to do bad things, now take the same energy. Just do good things. You used to plan parties, you used to plan averot, now plan good parties. Don't change your planning, right? Don't take away. Don't throw that part of you out. Don't cut it away. That's a very beautiful thing to know how to plan a party. You were very magnet, social, connected. People liked you. Draw card. So now, don't become an introvert. Why? That's a lowest opportunity. That's a shame. You have over here a tremendous engine. The engine. The mistake wasn't the engine. The mistake was you redirected the engine for wrong things. Teshuvah now means just take the same engine and use it for good things. Gold is not bad. Money is not bad. Technology is not bad. Technology could be used for bad things. But technology has an amazing place. Right now you're listening to this class through technology, by the way. Okay? So technology can be good. All of life is learning. It's called not kibush hayetzer, not conquering the yetzer, but kiddush hayetzer, sanctifying the yetzer. It's a very special art to learn how to sanctify my drive. When you have a passion, when we have a drive for the wrong thing, you should know the question you should be asking yourself is not how do I get rid of that drive, but how do I rechannel? How do I redirect that drive? Because that drive, if you like to talk, if you're very loud, if you're very funny, and you may think, oh, shame on me, why? No, not shame on you. Hashem created you that way. And that's a very good thing. You're meant to use that, but you're meant to use that the right way. The right way, I don't know how's the right way. You have to figure that out. That's between you and your own strengths and your own toolbox, what Hashem gave you. But don't change. Don't change who you are. Just maybe change the direction. Yeah? You know, kids that are born with a beautiful blessing called ADHD. ADHD, it's a blessing. The way it's described, it's like having a Ferrari engine and bicycle brakes. So what do you do if you have a kid with a Ferrari engine and bicycle brakes? Unfortunately, a lot of people, what they do is they get rid of the engine. They say, okay, well, we got bicycle brakes, so we got to give the kid a bicycle engine. And that's the biggest mistake. That's the saddest thing. Instead of getting rid of the engine, you should just get better brakes. Keep the Ferrari. You got the Ferrari, you got the engine, you're flying, you're great, you have this ability. People, what they accomplish, if they don't get ruined in school, kids with ADHD, what they could achieve in life, amazing things. Amazing things. You look around, you realize all these people that are successful, they have it. The amount of good that they could do in the world, the amount that they could accomplish in business, whatever it is, whatever they want. They have a Ferrari, they have a heart like gold. These people, I'm telling you. But instead of suppressing that, right? We quiet it, we shut it down, medication, or we tell them stop jumping. That's the mistake. Don't get rid of that. That's good. We have to learn how to use that the right way, the right time, the right direction. Right? We have to allow them to put them in a setting, in a circumstance that they're going to thrive, that they're going to excel with what they have. And every one of us, we have to really do that with our kochot. Whatever we're doing, if we're doing bad stuff, we're not supposed to take away the engine, take away the drive. We're just supposed to shift it. We're supposed to shift it and do good things with that ability that Hashem gave us. God says, you brought gold once upon a time for the egel. Gold isn't bad. Gold's very good. Let me show you. Look what you could do with gold. Come, bring it to the Mishkan. We can build a house for God. So, the Mishkan, it turns out, is a tikkun. It's a kapara for heta egel. Now, what was the sin of the egel, by the way? I mean, this is a very important question. What was the real sin of heta egel? According to many commentaries, the Ramban, the Ibn Ezra, the Kuzari, the sin originally was not, they did not intend avodah zarah. The Jewish people, when the sin started, when they woke up that morning, they did not want to do avodah zarah. Actually, it started with, they were well intended. They just wanted to serve Hashem. They wanted to serve God, not an egel. Eventually what happened was they said to the egel, this is your God. But they didn't want the egel to be the God. They needed something that could be an intermediary. They needed something that could be what he calls over here, a dmut muhashi. Something that they could just go to connect to God. I'll give you an example. Today, where do we go to pray? We go to synagogue to connect to God. Sometimes, right? You see people in shul. When they want to talk to God, what do? They go all the way to the Aron HaKodesh, they grab it, they kiss it. Would you call the Aron Avodah Zarah? Of course not. Why? The person's holding it, kissing it. I'm just connecting to Hashem through this. Right? So when you think of the Egel like that, the Egel was like a Aron HaKodesh. It was just like the Holy Ark. It was just like a shul. They needed a place that they could come and connect to God through that thing, through that place. That's not me, by the way. I'm not saying this. None of this is my own. This is the Ramban, Ibn Ezra, the Kuzari. These are big people. They just wanted to connect to God through something. So what happened? So what was the sin? What was the sin? And you realize they weren't so off, because later on in the Mishkan, God actually commands to build a golden statue, not one of them, but two of them, and to put it in the Holy of Holies, in the holiest place. So the very egel that the Jewish people built, the golden calf, as off as it wasn't actually off. It was very on. That's what God's about to tell them in a few months from then. In a few months, they build the calf. God says one day you're going to build the Keruvim. They weren't wrong. They weren't wrong conceptually, but they were wrong practically. Why? Says the Be'er Yosef, because there's only one difference. What's the difference between the Egel and the Kerubim? They were both gold. Both of them are statues. The difference is one. The Kerubim, God said. God commanded. Build it. The Egel, God did not say. All of life comes down really whether or not God said. And a lot of times when we substitute our own will, our own calculation for what God said, that's where we get in trouble. And it could be you're on the right path. It could be your logic makes a lot of sense. But it really comes down to whether or not HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded. Hashem commanded the building of the Kerubim. He said, do it, build it. The Egel, he didn't say. So the sin wasn't that they built something. It wasn't the idea. Is that they went ahead and they tried to chart out their own rules. Their own way. So that's the Mishkan. We find something very similar in Shabbat. Shabbat is one of those mitzvot that although we're allowed to do it today, because we have to keep it today, but actually before it was given, we weren't allowed to keep it. Before the Torah, Ben Noach, שרצה לעשות מצווה משאר מצוות התורה כדי לקבל שכר, אין מונע אותו. If a Ben Noach, if a non-Jew wants to keep any mitzvah, we let them. But there's one mitzvah that a non-Jew cannot keep, and that is Shabbat. The Pasuk says, Yom v'layla lo yishbotu. Day and night you cannot rest. We're here to work. Obligated. It's a mitzvah to work 7 days. Only when the Torah came and said, now rest on the 7th, now it became a mitzvah to rest. Until then, we weren't allowed to rest. So the Mishkan and the Shabbat have similar feature, a common denominator. That it was only permissible because God then came and commanded it. Only because God came and commanded to put a statue. A statue could be avodah zarah, and God says it becomes a mitzvah. Shabbat, if you keep it as a non-Jew, it's a sin. Then God commands, it becomes a mitzvah. Now we understand, says the Be'er Yosef, why these two mitzvot begin in our parasha with the phrase Asher tzivah Hashem, that God commanded. By Shabbat Sheshet Yamim, by the Mishkan, to go collect. Because these two, and only these two, are allowed because God commanded. Otherwise, if the Jews were to keep them before they were commanded, then they wouldn't be allowed to have kept them. That's his first idea that he says. Again, something very beautiful and very special. He gives a second answer that touches, again, on the first answer. We are finding later on in the Torah that there is a man, Korah. Korah comes, he challenges Moshe Rabbeinu. He says to Moshe, who do you think you are to take the kingship, to give to your brother priesthood? Who picked you? So what did Moshe say? Moshe said, come in the morning. Boker. Why did he tell him come in the morning? Talk now. What was Moshe saying? Boker, morning. Amar lo Moshe. Moshe was saying to Korah, Gebulot halachic be'olamo. And this is something very important in today's unfortunate, messed up culture, world. That today, you hear all the time, everyone's equal. Everyone's equal. What does that mean we're all equal? We're all the same? Equal doesn't mean the same. Equal but different. Not everything's the same. There's a difference. There's gender differences. There's gender roles. We're not the same. And that is something that from the beginning of time was very clear. Hashem said, there's morning and there's night. They're not the same. There's Boker and there's Laila. Gebulot chalak hadash baruch hu be'olamo. God made boundaries. There's a time for this, there's a time for that. This has this strength, that has that strength. Could you turn day into night and night into day? You can't. Vayi erev, vayi boker. We're not equal. Just because we're equal, we're not the same. Aharon HaKohen was made more special. He was different. He was made holier. God said, Aharon's the chosen one. What do you mean? We're saying all men are created equal. All men are created equal, but sometimes Hashem takes one and He makes him different. Look, I'm a Yisrael. I'm a Yisrael. I'm not a Kohen. Like it, don't like it, doesn't matter. Irrelevant. This is what I was born to do. Hashem created me, a Yisrael. I don't get to choose. I don't always get to choose. This is, by the way, a conversation that happened 2,000 years ago. Sha'al Tarnus Rufus Rabbi Akiva. Turnus Rufus came and they asked Rabbi Akiva, the great scholar, Ma yomi yomayim. He asked him, why are you, Rabbi Akiva, celebrating today Shabbat? Why is today different than yesterday? It's a Friday, it's a Sunday. It's 7 days, they're all days. They're all the same days. Who made Shabbat different? Who made Shabbat holy? How did Rabbi Akiva answer this question? Like a Jew, with another question. Amar lo, Rabbi Akiva said back, Umar gabar begubrin. And who made you a different person than the rest of the people? Why should you be the king? Why should you be more special? Let someone else be the king. Why are you in charge? If you don't understand that, if you don't understand boundaries, if you don't understand there's a system, there's people that are higher than other people, there's authority, there's rules, then you can't function. You can't live. You can't just go in and one day be the CEO of your company just because you want it. That's not how it works. That's not how life works. There's a CEO, there's a CFO, there's a manager, there's an employee, there's a secretary, there's different levels. There's different levels. You're a king. Who made you king? Why should you be the king? I want to be the king. I want to be the king. Of course you can't just be the king. That's not how it works. There's a system. What does Torah Rufus say back? Amar lo de marit savi. This is what God had in my mazal, that I should be in charge. So Rabbi Akiva says back, very good. So Hashem also wanted Shabbat to be more holy than the other days. So if you understand that you could be a king, then how could you not understand that Shabbat could be a different day of the week? Brilliant. Beautiful. So Moshe says to the Jewish people, he tells them about the Shabbat, he tells them about the Mishkan, these two commandments in our parasha. That these things God commanded. Shabbat, God made it holy. Aharon, Mishkan, Hashem made him holy. These are two things that God chose. God chose that they should be special. And in life, it's very important that we never forget that. That holiness, something special, something important. God made it like that. And again, it ties very similar to the first idea. Asher tzivah Hashem. This is how God made it. God commanded. We're not here in charge in this world. We're workers. We don't get to pick what's holy, what's a mitzvah. We don't get to pick. Right? I was once in an elevator and I heard there's this rule in gymnastics that you can't have any underclothing showing. You have to have the uniform covering everything. And there was this lady there in the elevator. She wasn't an observant woman. But someone asked her, why is that the rule that you can't have any underclothing showing when you're doing gymnastics? You know what she said? She said, I don't make the rules. I just abide to them. And I said, wow, I love that line. I don't make the laws, I just abide to them. Simple. We don't get to decide how we serve Hashem. We don't get to decide what makes some place holy or not. Hashem decided. Hashem decided Yerushalayim has holiness. Hashem decided that matzah is a mitzvah to eat. You eat matzah, it's a mitzvah. You eat something else, I'm going to connect to God, I'm going to make my own matzah. If it's not following the rules, then it's not matzah. You don't get to pick how you're going to do mitzvah. You don't get to pick how you keep Shabbat. Hashem decides. Asher tzivah Hashem. God commanded what's Shabbat. God commanded what's a mitzvah. God commanded what we eat. These things are not intrinsically holy. There's nothing special about matzah. But once God said it, then matzah became very holy. If you eat matzah, by the way, now, today, it means nothing. Doing it what God said, when God said. We don't get to pick the rules. We don't get to pick the laws. Our job, Asher tzivah Hashem. To understand, this is what God wanted. This is what God commanded. Hashem decided Shabbat's a different day. Hashem decided the Kohen's a special person. Hashem decided. And my job is to follow the rules. Kosher. I don't get to think what I think is kosher. It's healthy. I looked in the ingredients. We don't get to decide. All right. God said this is forbidden, this is allowed. We're not equals. We're not God. Adam HaRishon, by the way, that was his mistake. He wanted to be God. He wanted to make rules. He wanted to eat from the tree to be like a God. You can't be like God. We're not in this world to be like a God. We're in this world to be players. Player doesn't create the game. Player is not the ref. Player is a player. As long as a person has that clear in life, person have a very easy time. We only get in trouble when we start forgetting our role, our place. We only forget our place. There's a 1 year, Yom Kippur. There was an old man, he wasn't allowed to fast. The doctor told me you have to eat. The old man came and said, the rabbi, I'm not going to eat. I fasted for 75 years. The rabbi said to him, why did you fast for 75 years? What do you mean? Because Yom Kippur. No, he said, I know it's Yom Kippur, but why? Who said Yom Kippur? What do you mean? Hashem said. So the rabbi said to him, Hashem said to fast on Yom Kippur. Hashem also said to eat if you're old and you're going to die. The same way it's a mitzvah to fast on Yom Kippur, it's also a mitzvah to eat if you're not healthy, if you're sick, if you're elderly. That's also a mitzvah. We don't get to decide what's holy, what's a mitzvah. Person in life, we are here to serve Hashem the way He wants us to serve Him. Today I may be healthy and I could pray and I could go to Minyan. Tomorrow I may not be healthy and I may have to stay home and pray alone. But guess what? That's what Hashem said. That's what Hashem wants from you. We don't get to pick. That's a real soldier. A soldier says, I'm here to serve Hashem. Forget the life that I planned. Forget what I want. God, what do you want? This is what you want? You want me here? I'm here. Eved Hashem. I'm a servant of Hashem. That's the beautiful, highest level that a Jew can reach. To keep it simple. To be an Eved. To serve. A servant doesn't ask questions to the king. Why? How come? This is it. These are the rules. Of course, we turn on the brain. We try to understand. We question. We have feelings. But ultimately, this is the level of Na'aseh v'nishma. God said, I'm going to do, and then I could ask. But first, I'm going to do. And this is what we learn about the Shabbat. This is what we learn about the Mishkan. These are the only things that are allowed. First of all, because God said, Hashem commanded the Shabbat. He commanded the Mishkan. And if we do the same thing when we're not commanded, those things become asur. If I keep Shabbat as a non-Jew, not allowed. If I build the Mishkan before it was commanded, that's called chet ha'egel. That's first of all. And second of all, that a person always understands, a person realizes that there's place in life. And something is done because God said. Something becomes holy because God said. When I understand that everything and every person, including myself, we have a mission and we have our place in this world. Okay, we'll stop over here, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.